All right, guys, going over our practice problems. First question, it's asking us to create a, it's asking us to write a recursive formula, but the first thing is arithmetic or geometric, and I think most of you got this right. It is geometric because we are multiplying by the same number each time. We're multiplying by 1/2. Okay, so that makes it geometric. And then to write the formula for it, we're going to say either u or a sub n, I think the test uses u sub n, is equal to u sub n minus 1. So we're looking for this term n, but we have to use the term that was 1 before it. So that's what that n minus 1 means. And then we're going to multiply that by 1/2. Okay? So there's the recursive formula, but in order to use it, you have to have a starting point. And it says right here, use u sub 1 to represent the starting term. So we will say that u sub 1 is equal to 1,120. And then on the test and in real life, you should always put when n is greater than or equal to, in this case, it's going to be greater than or equal to 2, because if I put a 1 here for n, if I put a 1 here and then I subtract 1, that gives me u sub 0. But I don't have a u sub 0 term, I have a u sub 1 term, so my n value would be greater than or equal to 2. I think in the test I flipped through it, it only uses a u sub 0 term, and then n is greater than or equal to 1. But just so you know, in this particular case, n would have to be greater than or equal to 2. It couldn't be 1, that would give us a u sub 0, and we do not have a u sub 0. What is the 9th term in this sequence? So let's look at the calculadora here, because I can show you what you can do. If our first term, and pay attention to that, because if a test asks you for a specific term, you have to know which one you start with. A mistake I saw people made is they started with u sub 0 even though it said u sub 1. So they gave me an incorrect answer. They were just 1 off because they weren't paying enough attention. So if 1120, watch what you can do with the calculator, is my first term, and I multiply that by 0.5 and hit enter, my second term is 560. Okay? Then, if I didn't mean to hit enter there again. If I take 560 and divide that by 2, my third term is 280. And I said divide by 2, but you can multiply 1/2, whichever one you want to do. Then if I divide, so that's 1, 2, that's my third term. Divide by 2 again. That's my fourth, fifth. Now I can just hit enter. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. So my 9th term is 4.375. Okay, but if you were off by a term, you may have given me the term before that or the term after that, okay? And then if that's 9, now I need to figure out which one is less than 0.1. So I'm going to keep going. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And 15 is the one where it's less than 0.1. All right, question number 2. For question number 2, you are going to need a formula. Okay, so a mortgage of $100,000 is to be paid off in exactly 30 years. If the annual interest rate is 9.25% compounded monthly, what will the monthly payment be? And in this case, you just need to have, if there's a question like this on the final, I'll make sure that I give you guys the formula. But just to do the practice problem, you have your principal interest right here. Okay, that's $100,000 times the percentage. Then underneath, then 12, that's the number of months, obviously, in a year, or the number of times it's going to be compounded. That's where that compounded monthly comes from. You need that 12. 1 minus, 1 plus. This is the important part here. is since it's compounded monthly, you need to take the percent, which is 0.0925, and divide it by the number of payments that you're going to make in a year. So if you were going to compound it quarterly, you would divide it by thirds, right? Because there's 3 quarters in a year. Or by fourths, duh, because there's 4 quarters in a year. It's just that each one is 3 months. That's what I was thinking of. To the power of that 12 times 30 years, but it's a negative power there. So this is all just a formula, and you put this in, and I think you get $822 a month approximately. Now I worked with some people and we used a different formula and we came up with like $4,000 payments a month, and we were just using a formula that was not to get the monthly payment. It was a little bit different. So if we did that 4,200 something, you still used a formula correctly, but we did not use the correct formula. So if you want to try it, it might be good just practice in your calculator. I'm not sure there's going to be one like this on the test, but it's always just good to know how to find your monthly payment for things. What's next? Oh, match a recursive formula to the graph and identify the sequence as arithmetic or geometric. So you will need to know for the test that an arithmetic formula or your recursive sequence is something where you're adding the same number each time. And if you are adding the same number each time, that's going to be a straight line, right? Adding, sorry you guys, same each time. And that's just going to be a straight line, which obviously this isn't. You guys were really good about figuring out this geometric. You are multiplying by the same number each time, which is also an exponential relationship. Multiplying, which is why we had that interest problem that we just took a look at. So the answer is C. Let me know if you have any questions about that. What was the next problem here? Okay. Consider the graph at the right. Write a recursive formula that generates, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. Sorry, you guys. Oops, that's too big. Okay. Write a recursive formula that generates the points on the graph, and then write a linear equation. So that's going to be the explicit form, the explicit formula for the same line. So on the test, it'll ask you the difference like between recursive and explicit. Recursive, I noticed a lot of you guys forgetting some parts. So you all remembered the basic part, which is u sub n or a sub n, the term that we're looking for, is equal to u sub n minus 1 or a sub n minus 1, which is the term before the term we're looking for, no matter what it is. And in this case, I think, what are we doing each time? We are negative, adding 2 each time, right? So we take the term before and we add 2. And that's the, that's the skeleton. That's the basic piece that we need to know. But in order to find those points, you need to say which one was the starting value. And the starting value for this is our u sub 0 was negative 7. And the reason I made it u sub 0 is because it's on the y-axis, although I don't think that really matters. What does matter is that if I make this u sub 0, my n always has to be greater than or equal to 1. If I made it u sub 1, which is okay too, you could call it u sub 1, is negative 7. Then your n would need to be greater than or equal to 2. And the reason for that is, if I put a 1 in here, 1 minus 1 is 0, that would be u sub 0, right? And that would be this one, where n is greater than or equal to 1, because I put a 1 there. I couldn't put anything smaller. If it's u sub 1 as my starting value, it would have to be a 2, because 2 minus 1 is obviously 1, and that's what I'm starting with here. And I don't think it asks you specifically that part of it, but if you don't have that part of it, it's not going to be a correct equation. So u sub n equals u sub n minus 1 plus 2, where u sub 0 equals negative 7 and n is greater than or equal to 1, or u sub 1 is equal to negative 7 and n is greater than or equal to 2. Now, the explicit linear relationship, you guys were really good about finding this too. You can write it, let's see, in x and y. So y equals, adding 2 at each time ends up being my slope, so 2x, and then my starting value is negative 7. Okay, so it's a lot kind of cleaner to write it as the explicit. We already have our starting value. We don't have to state what our starting value is. So let me know if you have any questions about that. What's next? This graph shows the balance in Julia's checking account each month for the past year, and there are some questions about this, which I don't remember off the top of my head, and it doesn't look like it got copied on, but I think I remember the gist of it. It wanted you to draw a line of best fit, so I might put this point in there, and oops, that was terrible. Sorry, you guys. This is hard. This is not the line I want either. I want it so that you have about half the points on one side and half the points on the other side, okay? So it obviously looks like a linear relationship, and you can estimate your slope using like 2 of these points here, which, let's see, if I go up, what are we counting by here? 20, 40, 60, 80, by 20s, right? So if I'm going up 20, 40, 60, it's going to be 60 over, and then it's counting by 1s below, 60 over 2. So my slope is going to be positive 30 equals positive 30. Some of you got 20. I think some of you didn't realize they were counting by 20s over here, and please make sure you recognize that if it happens on the test. And then I can guesstimate my y-intercept by saying maybe 20, 40, 60, right? So my equation here is going to be y equals 30x plus approximately 60. And then what does the y-intercept mean? Well, I mean, that's my starting value, so I start with $60 in the account. I don't know why I'm writing sideways. Oh, my board is. That's okay. This is cool. So that's my y-intercept, my starting value. And my slope means she's able to save $30 more each month. Okay? Able to save $30 more each month. Okay, and if there's more to that question that I didn't get to, please let me know and we can take a look at it. But I think that was it. It just really wants you to be able to explain what does slope mean and what does y-intercept mean. Okay. All right. Oh, solving systems of equations. There is definitely going to be one of these on the test, maybe a couple of these. And I think this practice one that I put on here, this stupid one doesn't work, and I made it maybe a 4. So if you're writing this on a piece of paper, make this a 4. And then really to solve these, all you need to remember is how to use the matrix and the calculator. Let's see if I have the calculator pulled up here. Cool. So let's put these in the calculator. If you remember, we've got to go into the matrix, which is second matrix. We want to go over and edit. And I have 3 equations here, so we're going to change it to a 3 by 4, right? And then we put in the coefficients. So the first equation, the coefficient of x is positive 1. The coefficient of the y is negative 2. The coefficient of the z is negative 1. That's that top equation. And then the answer is 8, right, on the other side of the equal sign. One thing you do have to remember is it has to be set up like this, where you have all of the x's in a row, all of the y's in a row. Oops, nope, don't do that. And all of the z's in a row and all of the answers in a row. You may have to rearrange the equations to look like that. But let's see if you can follow along. A positive 2 for the second equation, then a negative 3, and then I changed this one to be a positive 4. I hope that works. In 23. And then 4, negative 5, positive 5, 53. Okay. Once you have all of your numbers in, you have to quit. I don't know why. You have to quit out. Then go back. I'm just going to clear that out for you guys. Then go back into the matrix. This time go over to math. And this time we go all the way down to R, R, E, F. Whoops, whoops. Son of a gun. It's B on this calculator here. And then we've got to go back into the matrix one more time, and we're going to select under names. We just have to tell the calculator which matrix we used. I used A, so I'm going to choose A. If I had used B, I would choose B. We just have to let the calculator know which one we want to use. That's why we have to go back in that last time. And the time before that, we had to tell the calculator what we wanted to do. Now if I hit enter, cool. So my x's come first, so that 1 means my x is equal to 22. My y's came second, so this one represents 1y is 7, and this represents my z is 0. So 22, 7, and 0, you can write it as a point. Let's see if we did 22, comma, 7, x, y, z. You are more than welcome to say x equals 22, y equals 7, and z equals 0. Do you want to check one and see if that works? If we have 22 minus 14 minus 0 equals, so hopefully 22 minus 14 is 8, and that is true. I just did that in my head, but I think that that is true. So we just checked one. It's probably always good to check more than one. If it's multiple choice, you can always put the answers back into the equations and see if they work. That's definitely a test strategy that's easy to use and practice for your SAT or ACT. But we can practice one of these before the test if you would like. What's next? Ooh, one from Unit 4. Oh, you guys did a really good job on this one. So this one, actually, I may stop this video and upload what we have done so far, and then I'll come back and do this just so you guys can get started. And I will send this one out right now.